You're listening to the Straight to Video podcast with Rob Lane.
What's going on? I genuinely hope you're well, and thank you for choosing to listen to my show Straight to Video. So, a few weeks ago on one of my favourite websites, Metal Sludge, there was this really cool article about a guy called Kenward Cooper who has just published a new book about his life and career called Rock and Roll Will Only Break Your Heart. It details his journey through music, performing, and even screenwriting, along with living, working, and gigging all over the world, and the friendships, relationships, and family struggles he encountered along the way. What really caught my attention though about the article and Kenward's story was the fact that whilst just a teenager he was a budding journalist. His young age didn't deter him from creating his own publication called Rockstar Magazine. It would dedicate its pages to the bands of the Sunset Strip in the late 80s, and whilst only being in his early teens, Kenward would become an important fixture on the scene, interviewing and giving much deserved publicity to this colourful group of musicians. So of course I was eager to deep dive even more into how all that came about, which is what we get to discuss on today's show. This episode of the Straight to Video podcast is, as ever, proudly presented to you in association with Affinity Photo, an incredible piece of photo editing software which I've been using for graphic design the past couple of years. I use it to create the podcast episode artwork you see each week, and it's an extremely affordable alternative to other programs on the market. So please, if you can, check them out at affinity.serif.com. Alright, let's get into my chat with Kenward Cooper, and if you'd like to really hear his full story, then you can pick up the book Rock and Roll Will Only Break Your Heart through Amazon, and also find Kenward on Instagram at glam_bone. But right now, let's learn how a teenager from Vegas managed to become one of the Sunset Strip's hottest journalists as we dive into my Straight to Video chat with Kenward Cooper.
Rob, how are you?
I'm good, man. How's things?
Yeah, doing okay.
Congratulations on the book, which I've got here.
Thank you, man.
What's been the response to it for you? Has it been pretty cool?
Yeah, it's been positive overall. People seem to have enjoyed the read and didn't expect the whole family aspect of it. But hey, I mean, I once went to a therapist during that time as I spoke in the book. She told me every family is dysfunctional. Otherwise, I wouldn't be in business. She's like, you're always going to have one member that's just not seeing the same as you do.
How was it for you writing the book? Have you kept journals all this time, or was it just a matter of during the lockdown, a matter of sitting back and going back through each year once at a time?
No, I never kept a journal, man. Only a mental journal. Friends are always amazed when I can recollect a time and place. This could go back to 20-something odd years, and I'll bring up something and they're like, how do you remember that shit,
Is it the most random stuff? Because I'm good at remembering random stuff, but not actual important shit.
Yeah, right. But no journals, just mental notes. And I think the story comes off very visual. So in terms of thinking that way as well, it wasn't hard to put together in terms of the flow of it and my starting point to the middle to the end.
Is it quite therapeutic for you?
For sure, it was. And I think that's true of any form of writing, even for songs, it's therapeutic. It's your best form of therapy and release.
If it's all right with you, I want to head back, way back, initially to the mid-80s, before the Sunset Strip came into your life, living out in Vegas. At that time, was you like growing up on a diet of MTV? Because we're a similar age. I think you're a year older than me, pretty much exactly.
Okay.
Or was you finding music from other inspirations, maybe radio? Or because I know your parents, they came from a music background as well. Where were you drawing your early musical influences from?
Yeah, it had to been radio. It definitely was, because I can remember having my dad's stereo deck that had a tape player in it and the radio dial. And I would be taping songs off of that all the time whenever I heard something I liked. And the first number of songs that I really remember loving that came through that radio was Changes by Bowie, Hold Me by Fleetwood Mac, Sunday Bloody Sunday from U2, Surrender from Cheap Trick. Those first few songs, man, I really feel shaped what I gravitated to.
Almost gave you like an instant blueprint straight away.
Sure did. Yeah. And just that time, man, being a kid and hearing stuff for the first time. So exciting, you know? I don't know how kids do it today. I know they get it off their social media, but it's like, I wonder if that's the same feeling for them.
Yeah, it is weird 'cause they've got the visual as well. I mean, we had the visual with the videos as well and stuff like that. But just to hear a song, just a song on its own, and have that capture your imagination, that's a pretty special thing, I think.
Absolutely.
What was Vegas like back then? What memories jump to mind, maybe compared to what it's like today? Must have changed massively.
Yeah, and it still does. It's still growing. You know, they're building towards the mountains now. I did this little clip on my Instagram that shows Red Rock Mountains. And I'm not kidding. Fucking 5 minutes from there are homes being developed. When I was growing up, making that drive to get to Red Rock seemed like from Vegas to LA. Just this long stretch of nothing in front of you. Desert. It's amazing how it's grown. But as a kid, yeah, it was pretty normal childhood, doing a lot of bike riding with friends and ditching school and finding a buddy's house who actually had MTV. Because the funny thing about MTV, man, some areas received it, were zoned for it, and some were not. You couldn't get it. So where I was growing up, we couldn't get the service.
Right.
For one reason or another. So having to ditch school sometimes to go and watch MTV. Yeah, that happened. That's kind of what I did as a kid. And just bike into record shops and music stores. Yeah. But also this flip side of that is, you know, my dad's work did a lot with hotels. So he would often take me and my brother out on the weekends, or the whole family for dinner, you know, out at a hotel. So this whole way of seeing the adult life in the casinos and people dressing up in Vegas, it felt different. It felt like an event, like just to go to the hotel for dinner or whatever. I remember he took us to shows like Siegfried and Roy and whoever the big star attraction was on the marquee at that time. So that left an impression of Vegas being this glitz and glamour type of place to live. It's got a bit of that now. You know, there was a time Vegas tried to steer itself to the family. Bring the kids, circus. And luckily, it's not like that anymore. It's more back to that adult, what stays here, you know, the whole motto. They were trying to bring it back to some sense of being a sinner.
You mentioned those great artists and bands that really caught your attention super early on, like Cheap Trick, U2, Fleetwood Mac, David Bowie. Who was one of the first hard rock bands to really hit your radar? Was that Kiss? Because I know they were like an early influence.
Yeah, but I think Kiss was more a visual thing at first. I saw the photos, the pictures, the album covers before I heard a note.
They're already drawing you in.
Absolutely. Yeah, they sure did. And I still love a lot of that. The hard rock part of it shaped my palette as well, if you will. For sure. I love it all.
Was you like just like 10 years old when you saw them? That's like got to be like mind blowing.
It was, man. A fucking tank on stage? Yes, it was mind-blowing. And actually having to experience Motley Crue be the first actual band I saw take stage because they opened the show.
You don't hear that very often, Motley Crue opening for Kiss. It's not a much publicized thing.
No. Reading back, because I went back searching for anything I could about those shows in that time. So I found out Crew was only booked for a week on that tour. I think they had the Plasmatics before them, and for some reason, they couldn't do the West Coast dates and they got crew. Lucky for me, they were fucking amazing, man. And I didn't even know their name till after or later that night.
How soon after the concert did you actually get to hear them on record?
So that show was April. And Shout at the Devil came out in September that same year. So we're talking, a few months afterwards. And it was my brother who bought the cassette. He's like, this is the band we saw open. And I fucking took that cassette and that became that was mine. That was my band now. I totally owned it. And it just spoke to me. It was like something loud and aggressive and just different.
Have you followed them throughout their entire career? Have you always been a fan?
I really have.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have. I dig them.
Have you done the stadium tour? Have you managed to see them?
No.
Have they come through Vegas?
They have. They come through here and LA, but I don't know, man. Would I go? I would, but I wouldn't go out of my way to see it at this point. Dr. Feelgood was the last tour where I could say, yeah, that was their height, the pinnacle of seeing crew. And I saw them when they came back and reunited with Vince on the Generation Swine. They did a killer show at Roseland in New York City. And that was great. But, after that, I love them. I love those records, but keeping up on every single release they've done after that, not so much.
No. How soon after that was it you started actually getting into writing and journalism then? Because this is your story, which I'm fascinated about, because I started a fanzine, but I was like well into my 20s when I did it. But I mean, you were super young. Your first one, Raging Death, all about thrash bands.
Yeah.
Can you tell us how that came about and what inspired it? Because if I've got it right, you was reading a UK magazine and seeing fanzines advertised in there. What magazine was that? Was it Kerrang?
You remember Metal Forces? That was it, man. Metal Forces. And they had that classified section in the back of the magazine, as you know, advertising fanzines. And as a kid, I had no idea, what is this? It looks like what they're describing as a magazine, interviews with so-and-so. So I ordered a couple of those.
How long did they take to come?
Probably a month or two. Man, I remember being a kid, being so anxious, waiting for the mail. You check it every day, hoping you get a package. So, that feeling, and finally seeing the magazine, these fanzines, and how basic they were, just Xeroxed and stapled on the side. I'm like, I want to do this, and I could do this. I mean, my dad's got all the printing stuff in his office, copy machines, and I'm like, let me start writing to these same bands that are in these fanzines and see if they'll send me some stuff. And they did. And then you reach out to record companies and they do the same. Man, it excites me just thinking about it because I remember being that kid in that feeling.
Yeah, like a light bulb thing. You could put the dots together, right? If I write to these people, there might be a chance I'll get something back. It was almost like it made sense to you, seeing how somebody else had done it. And I want to crack at this. This could work.
Totally. And then how fun is it getting shit in the mail, especially as a kid? So, Raging Death, I was certainly listening to a lot of thrash and the heavy stuff. And this goes back to radio as well. There was a local college radio station that at midnight, they had an hour show playing thrash. I remember setting an alarm clock just to wake me up in time to tape it because I couldn't sit through it really. I couldn't wait up for it. And even when it came on at midnight, I'd have the volume on really.
Yeah, you couldn't exactly crank the thrash.
Yeah.
You couldn't crank anything that loud at that time, let alone some thrash metal.
Yeah, totally. So I'd tape it, have the volume low, and in the morning, there it was. And I'd be discovering all this new stuff. Yeah, so that was fun. I did Raging Death for a couple issues, but the heart of what I love is pop melodies, whether it be hard rock or new wave or just, pop artists. That's really what I connect with. That's what I always felt I do as a writer myself. So there's where Rockstar Magazine came about. I'm like, well, my heart really isn't in thrash to keep writing about this. So I started just with that trip to LA that I mentioned in the book, came across all these bands on the Sunset Strip. And there's
Another light bulb.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
You take this trip to Hollywood with your family, and was it the British Import Store?
Yeah, it sure was.
You found all these cool magazines, BAM magazine, Rock City News, advertising the local scene. If you can, kind of take us back to that day or trip going into that shop. Was it like nothing you'd seen? What was that whole area like?
I walked in that store hoping to buy some spandex. And that's what I got, plus more, concert T-shirts. And there's where I see all the flyers littered on the floor by the door, all the free magazines, the local magazines, BAM and all that, as you mentioned. And you open up BAM, and it was just like band after band after band. Like half the magazine was adverts for shows. There was no scene like that at the time, man, where it was so music driven. It's mind blowing. I mean, you got pockets here and there in Nashville and Austin where you could say those are music cities. And New York certainly was. I don't know if it is anymore because the last times I've gone, those clubs down Ludlow, they're hardly there. But at that moment in time in the 80s, there was nothing like having that type of scene.
So many flyers, they were just spilling out everywhere. Everyone different.
Exactly. So much fun, man. So yeah, the whole thing of doing it again, doing a magazine. Well, I know how to go about it now, having done Rage and Death. Let me apply that same ethic to Rockstar and feature these bands and bring it out there. Let people know about it. Yeah, and so it caught on.
Who were some of the first bands you reached out to?
Tough.
Yes. That was a good one to reach out to because they were probably well onto it.
Yeah, they were totally, leading the way. St. Valentine, Rattlesnake, Shake. I mean, you name it. There were so many. And then calling record companies. And soon enough, MCA Records started calling us to place ads. And I was still printing it on the Xerox machine, and here they are calling to buy an ad. And my dad jacked up the prices because he knew what printing costs are. He's like, okay, let's do this right then. And that's when we upped the ante, started printing it with a professional look, and took off from there.
So you went for this vacation, got the magazines, came back to Vegas and started Rockstar from there.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
You and your brother actually convinced your parents to move out from Vegas to LA. I mean, how on earth do you do that as teenagers? Your parents must have been insanely supportive and really see how important it was for the both of you.
Yeah, maybe it's because they're artists themselves. They get it. It is mind-blowing. There's an actress I was reading about from La La Land, the actress. She was talking about a similar story where she was doing theater, little workshops in, I think it's Arizona. And she kept convincing her parents, I got to be in LA. This is where the industry is. And same deal. They sold the house and moved. But for me and my brother to do that in the 80s, it's amazing. What can you say? I mean, my parents bought it hook, line, and sinker, and there we were. It was only a matter of months from doing the first 2 issues of Rockstar to where things started to feel like I had momentum, and my brother was edging them on about acting and wanting to do film. And months later, house sold, we're in LA.
So 1987, you move out to Hollywood. You find your neighbor is guitarist Doug Aldrich, who was in the band Lion at the time. He's been in Whitesnake and now the Dead Daisies. Were encounters like that something you ever got used to, or was it normal? Because in your book, so many stories you've had so many stories like that throughout your career.
Yeah, honestly, I would say those random encounters in meeting people that you recognize from the entertainment world, that would happen to me all the time, man, which is why I started carrying my music on me, a cassette and then a CD or whatever, because I know I'm going to run into someone at some point. And sure enough, I've given it to, you fucking name it, the top, the A-list, and everything in between. Did it help me?
But at least you had the foresight to do it.
Yeah.
Even at that young age, like moving to Hollywood, did it feel like you'd arrived, you could really make a mark now you was doing the magazine there in the city? It must have opened up so many doors. You could just walk down the street to meet a band or something like that. It must have been pretty exciting.
Yeah.
How old was you in 1987?
15, I want to say. Yeah. Yeah.
So cool, man.
Yeah.
So cool.
It really was.
And like I say, record labels are reaching out. What's the first one, MCA, to promote the new Jet Boy album, Feel the Shake?
Yeah.
Did the labels or anybody have any idea that a young teenager was running this publication? Or was it like, pass the phone to my dad, he'll deal with this?
Not at first, but later on, as I started to do these interviews at the record companies, like they'd schedule interviews to come to the publicity department and do the interviews there in the conference room, whatever. Yeah, then they started, what's this kid doing here? I'm Ken Cooper.
There's Lon Friend, there's Jerry Miller, and here's Ken Cooper.
Exactly. Yes.
You were this like young 15-year-old kid out on the strip trying to make a mark. But the cool thing was you did it with your dad too. He was out there helping you get in the clubs. Did he enjoy the music, do you think? Or was he just buzzing to see you doing so well and seeing everything that was happening out there?
He enjoyed it. He did. I remember playing cassettes in the car or the radio. Yeah, he would get into it.
Who were some of the bands you desperately wanted to see break through success? You mentioned bands like The Zeros, Swinging Thing, Big Bang Babies, and I know Lines and Ghosts are a big one for you.
Yeah.
Was it all of the above or any others that come to mind?
Yeah, there was a band called Tomorrow's Child, who the guitar player, Rick Schaefer, he's since gone on to do soundtrack composing for video games and stuff. He's done really, really well with it. But he was one of those guitar players who reminded me of, oddly enough, Michael Lockwood from Lions and Ghosts. If you were to take Michael and combine him with The Edge from U2, that guy had this rack of effects from the floor to probably 5 feet high of just rack modules. He was that much of a whiz, with that shit. Like The Edge, cutting edge. No pun. But yeah, Tomorrow's Child and the singer, guy named Adam, just nonstop. He would blow his load in the first song or two. He had that much energy. He was so passionate, and his delivery. So yeah, they could have, in my opinion, filled that void of fans that liked pop music with that. I don't want to say Bon Jovi, because they signed a deal and the label wanted them to start writing with those songwriters. They had their own thing. But the labels were trying to push them. You got to write with Desmond Child, or whoever. But no, they could have been that band to follow U2 before there was fucking Coldplay, So there were so many bands, man, in LA at that time that could have been the next thing. Rattlesnake Shape, Jimmy Thrill was a fucking star on stage. That swagger, that sex appeal that you would see in a guy like Michael Hutchence. That's kind of what he had, but in a sleazy rock and roll. There were so many great bands.
It's so hard now, looking back, to get an indication of how huge things were just within that Hollywood world. I mean, you mentioned like the Zeros. They even had like clubs painted purple to promote their shows. It's hard to believe or envision such a supportive scene for an unsigned band. That's how big they were within that circle. It's crazy to think that.
Yeah. And you would think with that type of support that, I don't know, that labels or management or somebody could see that and get them further. But it was lost. It was lost, unfortunately. Yeah, they were another great band.
How often were you putting out issues of Rockstar Magazine?
It was monthly.
Could you see yourself eventually moving on to work for a national publication? Because I think you said Cream reached out to you at one point. Was that a goal at any time, or was you just focusing on your own thing?
Never thought about it, but Cream did reach out. And it's only later that I realized, well, yeah, Cameron Crowe was also a teen doing years before me, of course, doing that and parlayed into the next chapter of his life. But I don't know if they caught wind of that at the time to reach out or not. But yeah, it's kind of coincidental that they did.
How did your schoolmates feel about you doing the magazine or getting to hang out with all these bands? Were they fans of the scene too?
I didn't really talk about it with my classmates. No, there was only a couple that knew that I was doing that. And funny, I was failing literature at one point in high school.
Is that irony? Is that like ironic in like purest terms?
Sure is. But I wasn't focused on studying at that time. You know, I was all about being in the moment on the street, covering stuff as it was happening. So my academic studies took the backseat. But when the teacher phoned my parents to say, why is this happening? And she got wind that I'm actually publishing a magazine. Bless her, because she took that into account. And it's what got me through that semester. She passed me based on that. And she had me present it to the classroom at that time, which was not something I really wanted to do. But if it gave me a passing grade, sure thing.
The music scene around the world changed immensely in the early 90s and obviously had an effect on what was happening in Hollywood. Were your tastes changing around that time, or was you still all in with what you've been promoting on the strip? Was you bummed about it all, or was you beginning to focus more on your own music?
Yeah.
And that was becoming a priority.
Yeah, it sure was. I'd say when I was 16, so I had my band with my buddy Ashley Hamilton. And as I mentioned in the book, we had these development deals, as they called them. We got flown to New York to record, and Atlantic Records gave us spec time in LA to record some demos. So yeah, I was really more, that's where my heart was, to really make my music come to the surface and get to the next level. As far as what I was listening to, not so much the Sunset Strip scene at that point. It didn't seem to fulfill me at the time to keep that going. I was listening to everything though, as I still do.
British music, was that a big influence on you as well?
Sure was, man. You guys got the best stuff out there. It's no joke.
You see, we say that about you.
I don't know. Who are your favorites, man, out here? I see Van Halen in the back there.
Yeah, Van Halen, my all-time favorite band, but Poison were the band that made me want to be in a band.
Okay, man. I'm glad you bring that up, because a lot of people I speak to who live in the UK who also like Suede and Pulp, bands of that style, a lot of them will never understand, how do you listen to Poison? You know, it doesn't make sense to a lot of people. But for me, and yourself included, what do you relate that to, being from England yourself?
I've got a friend of mine, we both love that music, and it's just the pure escapism of it. I can see the flip side on it. I think it's the way you perceive music. I've always liked my music, like my films, larger than life.
Yeah.
That kind of music, that's what that gave to me. Whereas I think other people, like you mentioned bands like Suede or Pulp or anything like that, people gravitate to them because they can relate to it. It's on their level. They can see similarities in them or things which are being sung about. But for me, I wanted the larger than life escapism route.
So do you think there's more people like us?
I think so.
Yeah.
They just don't admit it.
Yeah. Got it.
And why? I have no idea. It's an ongoing thing for me as to why that genre of music will forever be looked down on. As much as I want to defend it and shout from the rooftops, It always will. And I don't know why.
I know. Me too.
Whether it's the excess of it all or the outright silliness of it all, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I'm all on board all the time.
And let's be truthful. There certainly was a point, that tail end of the 80s into the early 90s, 91, 92, where there were a lot of bands still doing the party vibe. And it did seem silly. There's no doubt. Maybe that's what turns a lot of people off. But look, it's all just music. It's all just the mood.
It's melody as well, because that kind of music is pure melody. Like you say, you're a pop guy.
Yeah.
So take pop
Mm-hmm.
with big guitars as well. That's a big tick for me.
Yeah, I agree, man. Totally agree.
Music became a massive focus, and it's what the vast majority of your book is about. You live and work all over the US and Europe. The book doesn't have the usual conclusion we're familiar with of a big record deal and world tours, but instead you get to share the relationships you forge along the way. It's a lot about family, the constant creative struggle, close calls with success. You do return to journalism though, and we're ahead of the curve with podcasting, which I need to speak about, launching your Glambone podcast. Was that back in 2008?
It was, man.
What inspired that?
Having all those tapes still just collecting dust, seeing on the internet blogs and websites where people were still talking about that music and having such love for it. To me, I started hearing about podcasts, and that seemed like such a cool idea. Instead of writing about it as a blog or print again, because print wasn't really happening anymore at that moment, the idea of doing something that is kind of like radio, sure. Let me think up an idea here to put that all together, play some of these artists whose demos I still have a box of, share it with people and do interviews and make it fun. Yeah, that's all it came from. Just the idea to have fun with it and have another outlet to put my time into and let people enjoy it.
There's some excerpts on your YouTube channel. Is the actual podcast still out there?
No, there's not. I just put up some little snippets on the YouTube page, which is Glambone as well. But yeah, maybe I'll go back into the recorded episodes and try and do some more of that to put it up there.
It's a great time capsule as well. Anything like that is a wonderful time capsule.
Sure is.
So it's definitely worth sharing. Which bands or musicians have you stayed in touch with from back in that day? A lot of the guys ended up moving to Vegas and Nashville, which you spent some time as well. Is there anybody in particular who you've stayed in touch with or keep tabs on and what they're still doing these days?
Yeah, the guys from Lions and Ghost, many of those Sunset Strip bands, Stevie from Tough. There's quite a bit. Jimmy, of course, from Rattlesnake Shake, who's also a realtor, and he steered me into this career path. So yeah, we talk like every couple of days. There is a good share of people that I'm happy to call my friends.
You mentioned you're a realtor now, working in real estate. Any houses you've represented that might have had some wild parties back in the day, do you think?
I'm sure they did.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I can't even talk about it until after a year. There's some
clause.
Yeah, some clause about it.
How is it for you returning into Hollywood now? All the hotels are being thrown up everywhere. And do you ever head back into places like the Rainbow and have memories come flooding back? Or remember such and such sitting at that table or when such and such walked in?
Yeah, I sure do. And I do go back to those places, and I'll still see a show at the Whiskey when there's somebody there that I want to check out. But yeah, it's fun to do that. It is just a mind fuck to see so much modernism, though, that the look of it is changing to some degree. And you mentioned Hollywood Boulevard. Luckily, that still looks like a shithole.
I think that's the thing for tourists like me. That's the least thing you expect when you go out to Hollywood for the first time, but that's what it's like.
I know, man. Hey, as long as that grittiness is still there, it'll always be Hollywood,
Kenward, I'm going to let you go, but I've loved chatting with you. Congratulations on the book, Rock and Roll Will Only Break Your Heart. And there's an accompanying soundtrack CD and a link to listen to your music online, which I think is a great idea.
Yeah, let's stay in touch. I'll take you up on that when I get out to Nottingham next time, and you as well out here to Vegas.
That'd be awesome, mate. Well, you enjoyed the rest of your day. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Rob. Take care.
Many thanks to Kenward Cooper for taking some time to chat with me on today's episode of the Straight to Video podcast. It was really cool to connect, and I was so inspired and impressed by the foresight and drive he had as a young kid. And I'm not going to lie, a little jealous too that he got to experience all that cool stuff back in the 80s and early 90s. If you want to learn the full story, his book, Rock and Roll Will Only Break Your Heart, is available through Amazon, and also find him on Instagram at glam_bone. Make sure to check back every Friday for a new episode of this show, and please follow or subscribe wherever you listen, or you can find everything you need at stvpod.com. Also, if you're enjoying each new chat, maybe share them with a friend and get them on board too, because every little bit helps. So that's all for today's show. Thanks for the amazing support and always coming back, and let's chat again real soon.